Today marks the start of Youth Month, and we're shining the spotlight on some of the challenges facing young people in this country. Key among them is the ever-worsening crisis of youth unemployment. It stands at a staggering 44.6%. Drug abuse is another issue. Violent crime and access to higher education are just some of the issues that plague young people in South Africa. Let's kick off this conversation, therefore, and I'm joined in studio by a number of political party leaders. We're going to start with the people that are with me in studio. On my immediate left is Nyakallo Mookena, EFF Central Youth Interim Leadership Member. And then next to her is Ndipiwe Olayi, the DA's Interim Federal Youth Leader. And then on the virtual platform, we are joined by Lufefe Mkutu, the ANC Youth League's Chair of National Youth Development Subcommittee. To all of you, my thanks for joining us. Let me start with you, Nyakallo. The country at the moment is seized with the matter of gender-based violence and femicide. The president not too long ago talking directly to young men that this is actually the problem of young men, and perhaps we should have a discussion about it with just the young men. What do you believe is going to be the solution to this crisis?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's a very important question. First things first, we need to declare femicide as a national disaster. Without us actually pleading to the case and saying we are aware that this is our reality, we are not going to get closer to solutions. The government is not doing enough. The government of today is not doing enough to ensure that, number one, men are taking the accountability that they need to take. Two, women are protected. When we look at the SAPS, right, the South African Police Service, when we look at around the country what's been happening, women don't even have trained police personnel that can handle cases when it comes to even gender-based violence. So how are we even beginning to take the case forward when we can't even begin to adhere to the very small basic steps of having gender-based violent desks around the country in all police stations? This is the case that we've been arguing as the EFF, that if we don't have GBV desks across the country, then where are women reporting these cases to? Who are they going to, and who is handling the cases with the dignity and sensitivity that they need to handle the cases with?
Ndipiwe, today was the funeral of Olayi Mongale. The perpetrators are young men like you and me. What's the problem?
Thank you very much, Xoli, and good evening to your viewers. Xoli, to be very honest, the scourge of gender-based violence is something that we do have to confront head-on, and it needs a whole-of-society approach to ensure that we eradicate the scourge. We need to also look at conviction rates. First and foremost, in order for us to be able to deal with it, we have the view that we need proper police resources and capacitating the SAPS to be able to deal with this, and secondary victimization should not take place. Secondly, Xoli, we have to look at the fact that once or when, in few cases, that women do report these cases, because in their communities or in their families, they'll be victimized because the perpetrators are either men that are breadwinners at home or men that have some sort of power over their lives. We have to ensure that we eradicate that secondary victimization. But also, once they are reported, when it comes to forensic investigations, it takes too long, Xoli. Then you see a situation where the perpetrators then are left to wander around the communities, the very same communities which they did this crime. So these are the things that we have to deal with, Xoli. And additionally to that, we have to look at the criminal justice system itself. It needs to be reviewed, but also SAPS himself, to ensure that we have rape kits in police stations, so that when women do go to report a crime, they are tested on site, because we understand that every single minute is vitally important to be able to track that DNA and be able to consolidate such a case that we can then ultimately convict these individuals. But also in those households, Xoli, these gender dynamics and gender roles, this historical context that we have to then break down to ensure that young men understand the society that we live in, to ensure that young men understand the responsibility that we have in society to eradicate this. This does not only belong or a fight for women, it's a fight that all of us that need to take as a whole of society to eradicate the scourge of gender-based violence. Thank you.
Lufefe, you are joining us from Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape, and I can mention a number of cases of gender-based violence and femicide coming out of that province. As leaders of society, that's what your mother body usually says. What is it that you are finding is driving the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide?
Well, thank you very much, Putuli. I mean, look, there are many things that are drivers of GBV. And of course, the context that one of my colleagues had mentioned is that the society, how it is designed, is very patriarchal. And this is reinforced by culture, religion, and just our upbringing, that men stand at the top of the food chain in society, and therefore they assert themselves through masculine tendencies. And the point is that we have got to break down those cultural and religious stereotypes. And of course, it speaks about the issue of how we raise the boy child, and how we are able collectively as society to make the boy child understand that his role in society, and he must view the girl child in an equal footing, and must see the girl child as an equal, not as a person that can be owned by the boy child, and the boy child needs to assert himself and be masculine and undermine the girl child. And I think that that would play a huge role in relation to really reasserting these values from a boy child point of view. And I think as the ANC, much has been done to raise consciousness around the issue of GBV, and I think that we have been able to mobilize society. Of course, more needs to be done so that our collective outreach against the issue of gender-based violence is seen and heard in every corner. And the point is that the justice system also needs to play a role ensuring that it deters some of these perpetrators, and that means that it must be decisive in making sure that people who perpetrate GBV must be thrown behind bars and the keys must be thrown away. So I think as well as the Youth League across the country, we've been having activities, particularly in the Eastern Cape. The Youth League mobilized the march, mobilized community around the issue of gender-based violence, and we've been saying that we reject any acts of gender-based violence, and we're saying that not in our name.
All right. Let's come back to studio. And I think this topic of gender-based violence and femicide, it's only fair that we dedicate at least the first segment of this discussion to it, because it just is that big a priority. In fact, it is a pandemic as declared by the president. Conscientizing society. I'd like to borrow from some of the words that were used here. What do you believe is going to conscientize, is going to wake South Africans up to this reality that young women are dying, and mostly they are dying at the hands of men? I'm not saying that we ourselves are not victims of GBV. At times, there are cases of women who abuse men. In fact, there is one story that we were running here today on this station. But when you hear that a mother has tipped off her son, who is the alleged killer, to run away from police, do you believe that society, South African society, is fast losing those principles of Ubuntu?
Thank you for the question. Xoli, I honestly think that we should also be very realistic with what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with gender-based violence. Just now, there was a report of a 14-year-old that was dumped in Durban deep in the open veld. This brings then to us the reality that it is getting worse. And if we don't have the high conviction rates from the NPA, if we can have a case getting dropped due to non-conclusive evidence, then really it needs to go to the question of what do we need to do in order for us to be able to capacitate such an institute, in order for us to see an increase in the conviction rates. And if we're going to talk about consciousness and how we bring in consciousness, we need to start seeing the government of today take the matter seriously themselves. After Olerato Mongale died a brutal death on Monday, nothing was heard of from the government. There had been silence up until the EFF Youth Command released a statement in addressing the actual issue that happened. And as young people, we don't feel that the government of today is taking the issue at heart. It's not considering the interests of young people. It's not considering the concerns of young people as we see ourselves as females, that tomorrow we can wake up as statistics, right, of gender-based violence or any kind of violence or even being killed in a worst-case scenario. But now we are not seeing them take implementation. And to answer your question, when you say what are the actual measures to take to even begin to conscientize, bring awareness closer to home, we need practical implementations that will be on the ground for the people in order for us to also name the actual issue. It is not women that are the issue. Women are the victims of the issue. The girl child in South Africa is the victim, right? South Africa is the capital of rape. And the person to be the perpetrator in this situation, we are looking at our men and how best can we go around it in order to educate the men. The government must be able to give us something more practical than what they are currently offering.
Ndipiwe, youth formations. What role do you play? Because I suspect the argument is going to be youth formations only come around when it's election season. Are you visible enough to conscientize young men about not treating women in the manner in which we are currently?
Thank you very much, Xoli. To be very honest, I just want to say this. I think people are no longer afraid of the law. People are no longer scared of the consequences of their actions. And I'm highlighting this, Xoli, for a reason, because I'm of the view that if we could have a stronger, a more stable, stronger state that will convict these individuals, I'm of the view that we need to get specialized units in the NPA that are dedicated to deal with gender-based violence, to ensure that these individuals are then convicted, Xoli. Then this will serve as a deterrent from individuals to ensure that they can see that might of the state taking charge and protecting the citizens. Because once the state cannot protect its citizens, Xoli, I don't want to lie, lawlessness and injustice will reign supreme. The DA Youth itself is at the forefront within our organization, externally. Just this past month, Xoli, I visited 9 provinces in 1 month, speaking to more than 3,000 young people throughout the breadth and length of South Africa, engaging them, Xoli. And internally, we propose policy alternatives in the organization, such as the ones that I listed, practical examples, not simply rendering a lip service, but practical examples, Xoli, to ensure that we eradicate this. How long have we been having this discussion in South Africa? How long more are we going to continue to have this discussion? It's time for us to be serious. It's time for us to put our mouths where our money where our mouth is, and ensure that we convict, investigate, and to set as example to individuals to deter them from committing any such going forward.
Lufefe, I'm going to come to you after the break, but I think when we return, we're going to focus the attention on the scourge of drug abuse. And you'll tell us what are the solutions and what's driving it. We saw instances of that in the Eastern Cape, particularly in the area of Gqeberha. That discussion coming up next. You're watching News at Prime. If you're just joining us, we are discussing problems that face young people in South Africa. Lufefe Mkutu is the ANC Youth League's chairperson of the National Youth Development Subcommittee. In studio is Ndipiwe Olayi. He is the Democratic Alliance's interim federal youth leader. And then Nyakallo is the EFF's Central Youth Interim Leadership member. Let's come to you, Lufefe. And you are in the in the perfect city, because Gqeberha is plagued by many issues, key among them drug abuse by young people, and then you have young people who get taken advantage of by so-called priests or pastors. Talk to us about what are these problems and why it is that formations such as yours are not at the forefront fighting these ills in our society. What is it that is driving gangsterism and drug abuse and young people being lured into churches where it is believed that those churches are not really preaching the word of God?
No, thank you very much, Putloli. No, I think, Putloli, where we must start the debate around the issue of alcohol and drug abuse and many other societal challenges is probably understand it in context. It is that the levels of youth unemployment in this country are a crisis. And as a result, young people then find other means to cope, and the level of mental health issues, and because young people generally are in a state of hopelessness because of this crisis of youth unemployment. And of course, in my view, the issue of poverty and youth unemployment is a key issue in relation to some of these societal challenges, particularly amongst youth. And the Youth League, has been at the center, particularly Nelson Mandela, to really mobilize society around the issue of crime. Because the issue of crime, is not just a Nelson Mandela issue, but is a national crisis, more so in Nelson Mandela.
All right.
And I think that...
So let me pause you for a moment. Let me interrupt you deliberately. When you say the Youth League is at the forefront, what is it that you have done that people can say Lufefe is correct? Yes, we have seen them in areas such as this and that area.
Yes, no. The Youth League has been there in the Omotoso case. Throughout the case, joined by the Women's League, there have been programs that the Youth League has engaged in trying to mobilize society. But of course, you've got to understand that the Youth League are not the police. The Youth League, their responsibility is to really register the issue of public outrage against crime, particularly in Nelson Mandela. And of course, we've been at the center of mobilizing young people, conscientizing them around the issue of crime. The issue of crime in Nelson Mandela needs intervention. It needs serious intervention. And we have been saying as the Youth League, particularly in Nelson Mandela, the Youth League in Nelson Mandela has been saying, together with the ANC, that a special intervention is needed in Nelson Mandela. I can tell you a story, Putloli, that in Nelson Mandela currently, xa ubeke pha intente uthi uyangcwaba kufika abantu bathi hey sizothatha imali yoba apha kubhujiwe sithatha imali iphi imali insurance. And I'm saying these are the things that the Youth League has been raising. The Youth League was there when the activist was killed, brutally killed. The Youth League was at the forefront of ensuring that the matter is known nationally. And they are engaged in struggle every day in our communities to try and say to young people, we have a responsibility to be at the forefront and mobilize our communities. Also, these thugs, they come from our communities.
Okay.
So it's a responsibility of the community, of course, working together with the police to ensure that there is no place to hide for these people. For the fact that a mother can just indicate to a son that the police are looking for you, therefore you need to go, really speaks about the levels of challenges in relation to our social values and how we're disintegrating in terms of our social fabric.
Okay, all right, let's give others a chance. Nyakallo, let's come to you. I see your fellow studio guest here is disagreeing with what the ANC Youth League representative is saying, shaking his head. What do you believe is the driver of drug abuse in our communities? Is it as he puts it, the question of unemployment?
We have quite a multiple factors that are driving the use of substance in our country, but definitely if we are to actually address the real issue, we have to come to the conversation of unemployment in our country. And we look at the government of today and as to what roles are they playing to actually address those issues. Last month, the EFF took it to the Free State province to actually picket on a youth unemployment picket march. And this was to address the frustrations that the young people on the grounds have, particularly with other factors that are then considered after unemployment. What then happens to our young people in the streets that are idling? What is the government of today offering as a means of job? We look at things that we are being offered like Nasi Spani, which are just 6-month initiatives to ensure that young people have something going on while distracting them of long-term values or long-term views that we need to be having as a country. And what do we mean by that? We need industrialization. The EFF is coming to say creation of job and not just jobs. We need sustainable jobs, Xoli, where we are able to look at someone who is in the community, who is maybe in a production that is established in the local community, that can find work that can push for a longer time. And we're not seeing the current government coming with those approach or with that solution. And therefore it deters young people. It finds young people in a battle of mental issues, of challenges, of socio-economic issues that then result to drug and substance abuse.
Can I interject?
Of course.
On the question of job creation.
Yeah.
The EFF,
yeah.
it came to the scene and almost shook Parliament to its core. And pay back the money became a rallying cry. And indeed, former President Zuma, he never saw his term to an end, in part because of the EFF that set on him. So in other words, I'm trying to say the EFF is a self-starter. In the legislatures, you've held people accountable. You may not be in government, but as I say, you're a self-starter. Where are the factories that the EFF can easily build? You have said that you are going to be building schools, if not universities. Where is the evidence of that as self-starters that you are?
I mean, Xoli, it's quite simple. Put the EFF in government and get all the responses that you need. If you can give us the chance to actually govern, then allow the EFF to show you what government will look like in terms of ensuring that our young people are employed. Allow the EFF to show you what governance will look like in communities. We're already making so many examples. Look at what the municipality of Tshwane is looking like as the EFF, and now we're coming into the scene now to the government of the people. Now we are in local community, we're helping communities. Give us the chance to actually govern and see if we are not going to be able to bring those resolutions for young people.
But I'm saying, Nyakallo, you don't have to be in government for you to achieve these things. I'll make a very, I'll make an example that will probably upset you. AfriForum, they represent everything that you disagree with.
Yeah.
But they're out there building a university, as they say now, among many other things that they're doing for their small community.
Xoli, but is the university inclusive
I'm
of
saying,
other races in
they're
the country?
self-starters.
Are we looking at AfriForum as someone who would consider best for all? Are young people, black people, marginalized people considered in the AfriForum ideal? I don't think so.
I'm not saying
this is
look
the
at their
reason
politics.
why we're looking at journalism now that's pushing to say, hey, AfriForum is now out there building universities, but we are considering the marginalized. That's our constituency and who we've chosen to abide by. Yeah. We're saying if it is not covering the marginalized black person in South Africa, then it has no place in our country.
All right, let's come to you, Ndipiwe. Your party is in court, I believe, fighting the Bella Act. As a young black person who understands what June 16 was about, can you sit here today and tell me that your party is doing what this country truly needs, or is it a disservice to young people of this country?
Thank you very much, Xoli. I'd like to start with the drug abuse that you were alluding to earlier on. I'm from the Cape Flats in the Western Cape, Xoli, and I've seen many of my friends are victims of drugs, gangsterism, many of which went to jails, have died, have overdosed, and are currently still hooked on drugs. I think we need to devolve the policing powers to competent provincial and local governments, where we can then allocate the resources depending on what's happening on the ground and the reports that are coming in, and also in Stellenbosch and where we do govern in Cape Town, understanding that local government's mandate is not safety. In Stellenbosch municipality, we've allocated millions to try to assist SAPS as a force multiplier to be able then to come to counter the scourge of gangsterism and also drug abuse. Similarly, in the city of Cape Town, we have technology, drones, and spot shooter that are trying to be a multiplier to counter.
Allow me to interject.
I'm starting to apply. I'm coming to you, don't worry. I'm coming.
Time. I'm short on
coming.
time.
You must allow me to engage you. You cannot simply move around without me properly engaging you with proper context. So with that being said, when we do govern, there are these interventions, Xoli. When you look at the situations of schools and the Bella Act, we are saying as a Democratic Alliance that the powers of the school governing body should be intact. It should not then belong to politicians. We see for too long where politicians hold all the power, Xoli, what the state has become. We are saying allow schools and parents and alumni to make the decisions of how that school should be governed. It should not be sitting in a minister's office who has never been to a Paul Roos gymnasium, who has never been to a Spurwing primary, so has never been to Mastandane to dictate the governance of that school. And that is what we're bringing forward, Xoli. More government intervention leads to a collapse of an institution.
All right.
Let's allow the institution to be independent and to be run by the families, by the alumni.
All right. We've run out of time, Lufefe. Very quickly, would you like to respond to your DA counterpart?
The DA in Western Cape continues to serve white interest. When you land in Western Cape, you see the state of hopelessness our people live in the Western Cape. And this notion that the Western Cape is a well-run province is a myth in relation to serving the interest of everyone that stays in Western Cape, and that development reflecting in the demographics. What we're saying, Xoli, is that we have got to reindustrialize this economy. That's what we're saying as the Youth League. If we are going to resolve these challenges of youth unemployment, which their spin-offs are really the issues around drug abuse, GBV, and all of these things, we have got to reindustrialize this economy. We've got to ensure that young people are integrated into the productive sectors of our economy. Young people are given opportunities to own businesses. Young people are actively participants in the economy. And we're saying, Xoli, we have mineral wealth in this country. And how then do you use that mineral wealth to ensure that you build the economy of this country and you integrate young people? I mean, it can't be, Xoli, that we are not able to beneficiate our mineral wealth. And the view of the Youth League is that if we are going to resolve some of these challenges, you've got to be decisive, ensuring that you intervene in the economy to deal with the structural challenges in the economy of inequality, unemployment and poverty. And we think that our view is that that is where we must start. We've got to build this economy. We've got to ensure that young people are integrated into this economy, particularly young people and youth.
Okay.
Who are black in particular, by the way. Thank you.
I'm sorry to rush you, but time has completely run out. Lufefe Mkutu, I want to thank you very much for your time. And in studio, Ndipiwe Olayi from the Democratic Alliance, thank you for your time. Nyakallo Mookena from the EFF. We have barely scratched the surface, but it is the start of the month, so we hopefully are going to get you back here to discuss yet more issues affecting young people. Thank you very much for your time tonight.